The lights on Halcyon Reach never fully dimmed, not even during what the station called night cycle. Daniel Cross liked it that way. He pushed his cleaning cart down the long, curved corridor of the diplomatic wing, past tall glass windows that looked out on the slow-dying star the station orbited. Most of the alien delegates walking past him did not even glance his way. To them, he was just part of the furniture, a human in a gray uniform who mopped floors and emptied waste bins. Nobody on this station cared that he used to save lives for a living. That had been a different world, a different Daniel. Back on Earth, years ago, he had patched up soldiers in the middle of chaos, keeping people breathing when their bodies wanted to give up. He did not talk about it anymore. When humanity joined the wider galaxy, most species saw them as new arrivals with nothing special to offer. So Daniel took the only work available to him, a janitor's job on a station full of beings far more powerful than himself. He told himself it was fine. Quiet work suited him. Tonight was not quiet. The diplomatic wing was hosting a formal dinner for the Oran Dominion, a proud and ancient empire known for its strict rules of succession and its ruthless court politics. Daniel had heard whispers about their young heir, Princess Isabel Thorn Oran, arriving to attend peace talks. He had seen her once from a distance, a tall woman with pale silver skin and sharp, intelligent eyes, surrounded always by guards and officials. She looked like someone who belonged on posters and monuments, not someone a janitor would ever speak to. He was refilling a supply closet near the banquet hall when the first sounds of trouble reached him. Not shouting, not alarms, just a strange hush that fell over the hall, the kind of silence that comes right before people start to panic. Daniel stepped out of the closet in time to see Isabel collapse at the head table, her glass shattering on the floor beside her. For one long second, nobody moved. The Dominion guards stood frozen, unsure of protocol. The other delegates backed away, murmuring in a dozen different languages. Daniel did not think. His body remembered what his mind had tried to forget. He dropped his cart and ran toward her, pushing past two guards who were too stunned to stop him. Up close, he saw it immediately, the pale blue tint spreading along her lips, the shallow, rapid breathing, the faint tremor in her hands. He had seen poisoning before, different chemistry, same story written on the body. Her muscles were locking up. Whatever was in that drink was shutting her nervous system down piece by piece. She needs air, and she needs it now, Daniel said, loosening the tight collar of her formal robe. One of the guards finally snapped out of his shock and grabbed Daniel's arm, growling something about touching royalty without permission. Daniel did not have time for this. "Let me help her or she dies in the next 2 minutes," he said, his voice flat and certain. Something in his tone made the guard hesitate, just long enough. Daniel searched his memory, old training clawing its way back to the surface. Neurotoxins that acted this fast usually worked by blocking signals in the body. He needed something to counter it, and he needed it from what was already around him. His eyes landed on the cleaning cart he had dropped, specifically on a small bottle of concentrated station-grade oxygen used for reviving overheated maintenance workers in tight spaces. It was not medicine, but it might buy time by keeping her blood oxygenated while her body fought the poison. He grabbed the small mask attachment from his cart, pressed it over Isabel's nose and mouth, and adjusted the flow. Then he began compressions on her chest, counting under his breath the way he had been trained years ago on a planet millions of miles away. The guards shouted for a medical team. Daniel kept working, ignoring the fear in his own chest, focused only on the rhythm of his hands and the fragile life beneath them. Time stretched strangely. It might have been 30 seconds or 3 minutes before Isabel's eyes fluttered open, wide with confusion and fear. She gasped, color slowly returning to her lips as her body remembered how to breathe on its own. Station medics finally arrived, rushing in with equipment and orders, but the crisis had already passed its worst point. Daniel stepped back, letting them take over, suddenly aware of dozens of eyes staring at him. Isabel's gaze found his through the chaos. She did not know his name. She did not know anything about him except that he was human, dressed like a janitor, and that somehow, impossibly, he had just saved her life while her own guards stood frozen. "Who are you?" she managed to whisper before the medics lifted her onto a stretcher. Daniel did not answer right away. He simply picked his fallen cart back up because someone still had to clean the mess on the floor, and because standing around waiting for thanks was not something he knew how to do. As the medical team wheeled her away, he caught one last glimpse of her face, pale but alive, eyes still fixed on him with a question that would not let go. He did not know it yet, but that single moment had already changed everything. Somewhere in the shadows of that banquet hall, whoever had poisoned her drink was watching too, and they now had a new problem to deal with. A problem in a gray uniform, holding a mop. 3 days passed before Daniel heard anything more about the princess. Station gossip filled in the gaps that official reports left out. Word traveled fast among the cleaning staff and maintenance crews, the people nobody bothered to watch their words around. According to the whispers, the Dominion had labeled the poisoning an isolated accident, a contaminated bottle from a careless supplier. Daniel did not believe that for a second. Accidents did not usually involve a toxin that acted within minutes and left no trace in the ship's food scanners. He kept his head down and did his job, telling himself it was none of his business. Royalty and politics were not his world. He cleaned floors, fixed jammed doors, and hauled trash to the recycling processors. That was the life he had built for himself here, simple and safe. But every time he closed his eyes that week, he saw Isabel's face again, pale and gasping, staring at him like he was the only solid thing in a spinning room. He was elbow-deep in a stuck ventilation grate in the lower maintenance corridor when he heard footsteps approaching, careful and quiet, like someone trying not to be noticed. He turned and nearly dropped his tools. Princess Isabel Thorn Oren stood there, wrapped in a plain traveling cloak that did a poor job of hiding who she was. Her silver skin and sharp eyes were unmistakable, even without the jewelry and formal robes. "You are the one who helped me," she said. It was not quite a question. Daniel set down his tools slowly. "I did what anyone would have done." "No," Isabel said, stepping closer. "You did what no one else did. My own guard stood there and watched me die. You did not hesitate." He did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing, waiting for her to explain why a princess would sneak down to the maintenance levels to speak with a janitor. She glanced around the narrow corridor, checking the shadows like she expected someone to be listening. "I need to speak with someone I can trust," she said finally. "And right now, that list has exactly one name on it." Daniel folded his arms. "You don't know me. I know you saved my life while men sworn to protect me did nothing," she said. "That tells me more than a title ever could." She explained, in careful and measured words, what she suspected. The toxin used against her was rare, expensive, and nearly untraceable, the kind of poison only someone with deep resources and inside access could obtain. Her formal guard detail had been standing close enough to notice something wrong before she even touched her glass, yet none of them moved until Daniel already had her on the ground. She believed the attempt on her life had come from within her own retinue, possibly ordered by rivals inside the Dominion who wanted to stop her from ever taking the throne. "If I go to my father's court with accusations and no proof, I will look weak and paranoid," she said. "Worse, whoever is behind this will simply try again, more carefully next time." Daniel studied her for a long moment. "So you came to a janitor for help." "I came to the one person on this station who has no reason to lie to me," she corrected. "Everyone else here wants something. Political favor, trade advantages, influence. You do not even know what those things are worth to my people." She was not entirely wrong. Daniel had no stake in Dominion politics, no ambition tied to her survival or her death. Maybe that made him useful to her in a way nobody else could be. Still, getting involved in an assassination plot against alien royalty was not exactly in his job description, and it was definitely not the quiet life he had built for himself. "I'm not a bodyguard," he said. "I'm not a spy. I clean floors. You saved my life with a bottle of oxygen and your own 2 hands," Isabel said. "I do not need a bodyguard. I need someone smart enough to notice what others miss and brave enough to act on it. You are already both of those things." Daniel thought about walking away, going back to his ventilation grate and pretending this conversation never happened. But he thought too about the guards frozen in place while she choked on poison, about how easily people looked past what did not fit their expectations. Maybe that was exactly why she needed him. Later that night, he found his old friend Mira Okonkwo in the station's engineering bay, elbow deep in a control panel, muttering curses at a stubborn wiring fault. Mira had been on Halcyon Reach even longer than Daniel, one of the few humans trusted with real technical responsibility. She looked up when he approached, immediately reading the tension on his face. "You look like a man who just made a bad decision," she said. "Probably," Daniel admitted. "I need your help looking into something." Quietly, Mira set down her tools, curiosity replacing her usual dry humor. "This about the princess who almost died at dinner?" Daniel nodded. Mira exhaled slowly, glancing around the empty bay before leaning in closer. "All right," she said. "Tell me everything." Outside, unseen by either of them, a shadow lingered near the entrance to the engineering bay for just a moment too long before moving on. Someone else on Halcyon Reach had already noticed that the janitor and the princess were no longer strangers, and that discovery would not stay quiet for long. Rain never fell on Halcyon Reach, but the station had a garden dome that simulated it once a week, a soft mist that settled over rows of alien plants from a dozen different worlds. Isabel had started meeting Daniel there during his short breaks, the two of them sitting on a bench half hidden behind tall blue ferns where nobody thought to look for a princess. It was an unlikely friendship, but it had grown quickly in the days since her poisoning. "Tell me about Earth," she said one evening, watching the mist drift between the leaves. "Not the version in the diplomatic files. The real one." Daniel considered the question longer than he needed to. "It's not a peaceful story. We fought each other for most of our history. Wars over land, over beliefs, over things that seem small looking back. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. And yet you survived," Isabel said. "We survived because enough people decided surviving mattered more than winning," Daniel said. "It wasn't clean or easy. There's no golden age hiding in our past. Just people trying to do better than the ones before them." Isabel was quiet for a moment. "In the Dominion, weakness is punished, not forgiven. My people believe strength alone keeps an empire alive. Rivals do not debate you out of power, they remove you from it entirely. That is why I cannot trust my own guards. That is why I cannot trust half my own family." "That sounds exhausting," Daniel said honestly. "It is the only life I have known," she replied. "Until now." Their conversations had a way of drifting from politics to something quieter, more personal. Daniel found himself telling her things he had not spoken about in years, about the people he had failed to save during his time as a medic, about the weight that had eventually driven him off his homeworld entirely. Isabel listened without judgment, something he had not expected from someone raised in a court built on judgment and consequence. Meanwhile, Mira had been working through the station's security logs, carefully avoiding anything that would flag her searches as suspicious. She found Daniel in the maintenance bay the next morning, her tablet full of notes. "The toxin used on Isabel doesn't exist in any standard medical database," Mira said. "But I found a partial match in an old cargo manifest 3 months back. A shipment labeled as industrial cleaning compound, delivered to the Dominion section of the station under a diplomatic seal, which means nobody actually inspected it. Someone smuggled it in through official channels," Daniel said slowly. "And whoever signed off on that shipment had serious clearance," Mira added. "This wasn't some random assassin. This was someone close to Isabel's own operation." That afternoon, Daniel relayed the information to Isabel in the garden dome. Her expression darkened as she processed it. "There is only a small circle of people with that level of clearance," she said. "My personal secretary, 2 senior guards, and General Drath Callum, commander of my royal guard." "The man supposed to protect you," Daniel said. "The man my father personally assigned to protect me," Isabel corrected, her voice tight. "If Callum is involved, this goes deeper than one poison glass. It means someone very powerful wants me removed before I can take the throne." Their investigation might have stayed quiet if not for what happened 2 nights later. Daniel was walking Isabel back toward the diplomatic wing after another meeting in the garden dome when a maintenance drone suddenly veered off its programmed path and shot toward them at dangerous speed, its cutting laser flaring to life. Daniel shoved Isabel hard to the side, both of them tumbling behind a support pillar as the drone's beam scorched the wall where they had just been standing. Myra's voice crackled urgently through Daniel's comm unit moments later. She had been monitoring station systems remotely and caught the drone's override the instant it happened. "I just shut down its control link," she said breathlessly. "Someone hacked its navigation from an internal terminal. I'm tracing the signal now." Isabel sat frozen against the pillar, staring at the scorch mark on the wall, understanding fully now how close she had come to a second attempt on her life. "They are getting bolder," she whispered. "A poison could be explained away. A malfunctioning drone cannot be ignored twice." Daniel helped her to her feet, his own heart hammering from the adrenaline. "Which means whoever is behind this is running out of patience." Not far away, in a private office overlooking the diplomatic wing, Counselor Ren Vasco watched the security feed of the incident with quiet interest, a thin smile playing at the corner of his mouth. He had not ordered the attack, but he had certainly noticed it, and information like this, dangerous secrets shared between a princess and a station janitor, was exactly the kind of leverage a clever man could use to his advantage. He made a note to reach out to General Callum personally, and another note to keep a very close eye on the human named Daniel Cross. The Garden Dome's rain cycle ended that night as scheduled, the mist settling into the soil below. But for Daniel and Isabel, the quiet calm of their meetings there had been shattered, replaced by the certain knowledge that time was running out, and that whoever wanted Isabel dead would not stop until they succeeded. The maintenance access tunnels beneath Halcyon Reach formed a maze that almost nobody bothered to map, a tangle of pipes and cables running beneath the polished floors where the diplomats and dignitaries walked. Daniel knew that maze better than anyone alive on the station. Years of unglamorous work had taught him every shortcut, every hidden junction, every terminal that most people forgot even existed. For the first time, that knowledge felt like something powerful rather than something small. He crouched beside an old maintenance terminal 3 levels below the diplomatic wing, Myra's voice guiding him through her comm link as he worked. "You're looking for a data cache tied to the drone's original control override," she said. "It should still be logged locally even if someone wiped the central system." Daniel's fingers moved carefully over the old interface, a system so outdated most technicians ignored it entirely, which was exactly why it still held information nobody had bothered to erase. After several tense minutes, a string of access logs appeared on the screen. He read the authorization codes twice to make sure he was not imagining them. "Mira," he said quietly, "I've got a name attached to this override. General Drath Callum, personal terminal, 3 days before the poisoning." There was a pause on the other end. "That confirms it," Mira said. "He accessed drone control systems before the first attack, not after. This wasn't a rushed decision. He's been planning this for a while." Daniel copied the data onto a small storage drive, careful not to trigger any alerts. He knew this alone would not be enough. General Callum held enormous influence within the Dominion's military structure, and accusing him without airtight proof would likely get Daniel killed and Isabel discredited before anyone even reviewed the evidence properly. He found Isabel later that evening in a quiet reading room within the diplomatic wing, one of the few places she could be alone without a full guard detail hovering nearby. She listened intently as he laid out what he and Mira had found, her jaw tightening with each new detail. "Callum served under my grandfather," she said softly. "My father trusted him completely. If he has turned against me, it likely means the faction behind this reaches much higher than one general acting alone." "Who would benefit most if you never took the throne?" Daniel asked. Isabel's eyes darkened. "My cousin, Regent Haven. He has argued for years that the line of succession should shift away from my branch of the family. If I die before my coronation, the throne passes to him instead." Before Daniel could respond, a soft knock interrupted them. The door slid open to reveal Ambassador Celis Wren, a Threnal diplomat known across the station for her calm demeanor and unreadable expressions. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, closing the door quietly behind her. "Forgive the intrusion," Celis said, her voice smooth and measured. "I believe we should speak plainly, the 3 of us." Isabel straightened, wary. "Ambassador, this is a private matter." "It stopped being entirely private the moment a drone tried to kill you in a public corridor," Celis replied. "The Threnal value neutrality, Princess, but we also value stability. A civil conflict within the Oran Dominion, sparked by your assassination, would destabilize trade routes my people depend on. I have my own reasons for wanting you to survive this." Daniel studied the ambassador carefully, unsure whether to trust her sudden involvement. "What do you know?" Celis folded her hands. "I know that General Callum has met privately with Counselor Vasco twice this week, in locations conveniently absent from the station's official visitor logs. I know that money has moved through certain trade accounts that trace back to Regent Haven's private holdings. I do not know everything, but I know enough to say this conspiracy involves more people than just one general. Isabel exchanged a glance with Daniel, both of them processing the weight of what Celis had just revealed. If Counselor Vasco was involved, then the very station officials meant to oversee the peace talks were compromised as well. Why tell us this? Isabel asked carefully. What do you want in return? Only your survival, Celis said simply. And perhaps, someday, your gratitude. The Threnel do not forget who stood with them in difficult times. After the ambassador left, Daniel and Isabel sat in tense silence for a long moment. Can we trust her? Daniel finally asked. I do not know, Isabel admitted. But right now, we have very few allies to choose from. Their next move needed to be careful. With Vasco potentially feeding information to Callum, anything they did within the diplomatic wing risked exposure. Daniel suggested using the maintenance tunnels to move undetected, gathering more evidence from restricted areas before making any accusations. Isabel agreed, though the fear in her eyes was impossible to hide completely. Late that night, as Daniel prepared his equipment for another careful sweep of the lower systems, Mira sent an urgent message through his comm unit. Her voice was tense, stripped of its usual dry humor. Daniel, someone just accessed the terminal you used earlier today, she said. They know you were digging through those logs. You need to warn Isabel right now. I think they're moving faster than we expected. Daniel's stomach tightened as he grabbed his gear and headed for the door. Whatever time they thought they had left had just run out. Counselor Ren Vasco had built his entire career on knowing exactly when to switch sides. He sat in his private office that night, watching the security feed showing Daniel's earlier activity near the old maintenance terminal, and made his decision with practiced ease. Loyalty to a princess who might not survive the week meant nothing compared to the favors General Callum had already promised him. He opened a secure channel and sent a short message for words that would set everything in motion. They know about you. Within the hour, Halcyon Reach's diplomatic wing was placed under emergency lockdown, officially blamed on a supposed security threat detected in the lower systems. In reality, it was General Callum sealing every exit while his loyalists moved quietly through the corridors, searching for Daniel and Isabel before either of them could bring their evidence to anyone with real authority. Daniel reached the reading room just as the lockdown alarms began sounding through the station. Isabel was already on her feet, alarm clear on her face. This is not a normal security protocol, she said. Someone triggered this deliberately. Vasco, Daniel said grimly, remembering Myra's warning. He must have told Callum we were digging into the logs. Myra's voice crackled urgently through his comm. Guys, I'm seeing armed personnel moving through the diplomatic wing, and they're not station security. Dominion uniforms. You need to move now. The main corridors were being sealed section by section, leaving fewer and fewer safe paths. Daniel grabbed Isabel's arm, pulling her toward a service panel hidden behind a decorative wall hanging, one of dozens of maintenance access points scattered through the station that only someone who cleaned these halls every day would know existed. Where are we going? Isabel asked as Daniel pried the panel open. Somewhere they won't think to look first, Daniel said. The old tunnels beneath the wing. I know them better than anyone with a rank higher than mine. They dropped into the narrow maintenance corridor just as heavy footsteps echoed through the hall they had left behind. Daniel sealed the panel quietly behind them, plunging the tunnel into dim emergency lighting. Isabel's breathing was fast, but she kept pace with him without complaint, her earlier fear hardening into focused determination. Mira guided them through her comm link, rerouting security cameras and quietly overriding door locks to keep their path clear. I can buy you maybe 20 minutes before someone notices I'm tampering with the system, she warned. After that, I don't know what happens. 20 minutes is enough, Daniel said, though he was not entirely sure that was true. As they moved deeper into the tunnels, Isabel finally spoke the question that had clearly been weighing on her. If Callum captures us, he will not simply kill me quickly. He will make it look like an accident, something believable enough that my father never questions it. And you, Daniel, you will simply disappear. A janitor who was never important enough for anyone to miss. Then we don't get captured, Daniel said simply. They reached a junction deep beneath the station, close to the aging reactor core that powered much of the diplomatic wing's older systems. It was here that Myra's voice suddenly changed, tension sharpening her words. Daniel, I just lost visual on the corridor behind you. Someone cut my camera feed manually. They're close. Almost as if summoned by her warning, General Drath Callum stepped into the tunnel ahead of them, flanked by 2 armed guards, his expression calm in a way that felt far more dangerous than anger would have. Princess, he said evenly, this has gone on long enough. Isabel straightened, refusing to show fear despite the very real danger standing before her. You swore an oath to protect me, General. My grandfather trusted you. Your grandfather is dead, Callum replied coldly. And the Dominion needs strength, not sentiment. Regent Haven understands that. You, I am afraid, do not. Daniel stepped slightly in front of Isabel, drawing Callum's attention fully onto himself. You had a princess poisoned and sent a drone to cut her down in a public hallway. That's not strength. That's cowardice hiding behind a uniform. Callum's eyes narrowed, clearly unaccustomed to being challenged by someone so far beneath his station. The human speaks boldly for someone who cleans floors for a living. Somebody has to, Daniel said. Might as well be someone who isn't afraid to see what's actually happening around him. Callum gestured sharply to his guards. Take them both. Quietly, if possible. The guards advanced, and for a moment it seemed the tunnel would become the place where everything ended. But Myra's voice suddenly burst through Daniel's calm, urgent and triumphant. I found something. Ambassador Wren just requested emergency access to the full Diplomatic Council, live feed, station-wide. She says she has evidence of a conspiracy against the Oran succession, and she's naming Callum directly. It's happening right now, broadcasting to every delegate on the station. Callum's confident expression faltered for the first time, his gaze flicking toward a nearby wall display now flickering to life with an emergency council transmission. Ambassador Celis Wren stood calmly before the assembled diplomatic council, laying out financial records, security logs, and communication intercepts tying General Callum and Regent Haven directly to the attempts on Isabel's life. The guards hesitated, unsure whether to continue following orders that were now being exposed in real time to the entire station. Callum's carefully built power was unraveling in front of him, and he knew it. This isn't over, he snarled, backing toward a side passage as station security, Real station security, could be heard approaching from multiple directions now that the false lockdown had been overridden. Daniel moved to stop him, but Isabel caught his arm. Let him run, she said quietly. He has nowhere left to go that my father's authority cannot reach. As Callum's footsteps faded into the tunnels, Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe, the adrenaline slowly draining from his body. Isabel looked at him, something new in her expression, not just gratitude, but genuine respect. You could have let him take me, she said. It would have been safer for you. Wasn't really an option, Daniel replied simply. Some people are worth the risk. The Diplomatic Council chamber had never been so crowded. Delegates from a dozen species packed the tiered seating, murmuring among themselves as station security escorted the last of General Callum's loyalists out in restraints. Callum himself had been captured within the hour, cornered near a docking bay while trying to flee the station entirely. Regent Haven's involvement, once suspected only in whispers, now sat exposed in hard evidence for the entire galactic community to see, financial transfers, private communications, and testimony that left no room for denial. Princess Isabel Thorn Oren stood at the center of the chamber, her formal robes replaced temporarily with simpler traveling clothes still marked with dust from the maintenance tunnels. She had refused to clean up before addressing the council, wanting every delegate present to see exactly what she had survived. 3 days ago, I was poisoned at my own welcoming dinner, she said, her voice steady despite everything she had endured. Since then, I have been hunted through the corridors of a station meant to represent peace and cooperation between our peoples. The man responsible stood among my own guards, sworn to protect me. The plot reached into my own family's ambitions for power. She paused, letting her words settle over the assembled delegates. I stand here today not because of my title, not because of my guards, and not because of Dominion strength. I stand here because a man with no political power at all decided that my life mattered enough to risk his own for it. Daniel stood near the back of the chamber, deeply uncomfortable with the attention now shifting toward him. He had not expected to be mentioned at all, let alone singled out in front of representatives from across known space. Mira, standing beside him, nudged his shoulder with a small grin. "Told you that you'd regret helping royalty," she whispered. Isabel continued, addressing the council directly. General Callum called him nothing more than a janitor, someone beneath consideration. That same janitor saved my life twice, uncovered a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of my own government, and asked for nothing in return. If the Dominion truly values strength, let it recognize that strength does not always wear a uniform or hold a title. The chamber fell silent for a long moment before Ambassador Celis Wren rose from her seat among the neutral delegates. The Threnal formally commend the actions taken to preserve stability within these talks, she said calmly. We also note, for the record, that this crisis was resolved not through military might, but through loyalty, honesty, and the courage of ordinary individuals. Perhaps there is a lesson in that for all of us. In the days that followed, the fallout from the conspiracy reshaped much of the diplomatic wing's leadership. Councillor Vasco's betrayal came to light through records Celis had gathered, and he was quietly removed from his position, his reputation destroyed among the very people he had tried to manipulate for advantage. Regent Haven, facing formal charges within the Dominion's own legal system, saw his claim to the throne collapse entirely under the weight of the evidence against him. Isabel's position as heir was formally confirmed before the full council, her coronation now scheduled to proceed without the shadow of assassination hanging over it. She spent her final days on Halcyon Reach handling the necessary formalities, meetings, signatures, and careful political repair work required after such a public scandal. But she made time, every single day, to find Daniel in whatever corner of the station his work had taken him. On her last evening before departing for the Dominion capital, she found him in the Garden Dome, sitting on the same bench where their unlikely friendship had first taken root. The simulated rain had just ended, leaving the air cool and fresh among the tall blue ferns. I have a position for you, Isabel said, settling beside him. An advisor's seat within my personal court. Real influence, real recognition. You would never have to clean another floor again. Daniel considered the offer carefully, turning it over in his mind. Part of him understood exactly what it would mean: security, respect, an escape from the quiet anonymity he had lived in for years. But it was not really him, and they both seemed to know it. I appreciate it, he said finally. But that's not where I belong. Politics, courts, all of that. It's your world, not mine. I'm better suited to fixing broken things and mopping up messes, literally and otherwise. Isabel smiled, something soft and genuine crossing her usually composed features. I expected you might say that. Doesn't mean this has to be goodbye, Daniel added. You'll still need someone who tells you the truth, even when it's inconvenient. Someone with nothing to gain by lying to you. An honest friend, Isabel said quietly. That is rarer in my world than you might think. Then I guess you're stuck with me, Daniel said, a small smile finally breaking through his usual quiet reserve. Before she left the following morning, Isabel made one final gesture, quiet but deliberate. She requested that Daniel's service record be formally amended, no longer listing him simply as station maintenance staff, but as a recognized friend of the Oran Dominion, a title carrying no political power, but ensuring that no delegate or guard would ever again overlook him as easily as they once had. As her transport ship pulled away from Halcyon Reach, Daniel stood at the observation window, watching until it disappeared into the stars. Mira found him there a few minutes later, arms crossed, a knowing look on her face. You do realize you just became the most talked about human on this entire station, she said. Daniel shrugged, picking his cleaning cart back up from where he had left it against the wall. Someone still has to mop the floors, he said simply, and got back to work, exactly the way he liked it.